Bill Sharpe has been a longtime news anchor at WCSC-TV Live 5 News, and just recently he celebrated 47 years at the station and also turned 70 years old. I speak exclusively with Bill for this edition of Quintin's Close-Ups, and if you haven't already, subscribe to my YouTube channel and like Quintin's Close-Ups on Facebook.
Bill Sharpe, welcome back to Quintin's Close-Ups.
Quintin, it's always a pleasure to talk to you, my friend. How have you been?
Doing great here. The sun's coming up here in downtown Charleston in my backyard, so it's going to be a great day today, too.
Oh, that's great. That's a beautiful background you've got there. Unfortunately, I'm in a little cubbyhole here, my new little office, because we're all still trying to separate and stay away from each other. But at least, Quintin, in my little cubbyhole, by the way, you would understand that this used to be an edit bay. And in the cubbyhole, the edit bay right next to me is where Anne McLaughlin is. And the good news is we're in here by ourselves, so we can take off our masks. As soon as I leave my cubbyhole, my little office, if you will, I got to put the mask back on.
Right. Yeah, that's how it is right now. This is the new normal for right now, temporarily. Hopefully it's just temporarily.
Yeah, well, it's been temporary now for what, about 6 or 8 months? I'm ready for it to be over, and so is everybody else, Quintin. But, you know, we here at Live 5, I got to commend them, Quintin. They're very good, very strict, and consequently, we haven't had any cases in the building. We have to wear masks. We have to have our temperature checked. We have to have our IDs affirmed, you know, before we can get in. And I like that. So we haven't had any disease inside. So that's good.
Yeah, thank God in the name of Jesus. Well, let me talk about you. Yes, indeed. Absolutely. I know, obviously, you just turned 70 years old last week, and happy belated birthday to you.
Thank you, Quintin. That's wonderful.
Oh, you're very welcome. You know, Anne McGill wrote a story about obviously you turning 70, and in an article she says this: according to peoplehistory.com, in the year 1950 when you were born, gallon of gas was 18 cents. A new car was $1,510. Men's all-wool seats were $28.90, and a 1-carat diamond ring was close to $400. It's 2020, Bill, and you just turned 70. What does 70 mean to you?
Oh, gosh, Quintin, that's a great question. I'm just lucky. I never thought I'd make it this far. I never knew that I'd be an old man like this. Never knew I'd make it to 70. You know, Quintin, when you're young, like you are a young man, you often don't think about the future. You think about the here and now.
Right.
And I'm just delighted that I am 70, and I have a wonderful family. I've got friends like you, and I've still got a great job here at Live 5, one I have held, by the way, since I was 22, almost 23. I took the job on October the 3rd, I believe, here, and my birthday was October 15th. So 12 days after I got here, I turned 23. I've been here ever since.
What is the biggest difference between 23 years ago and, well, actually, when you turned 23 at the time back in the 1970s to right now, when you think of WCSC Live 5 News?
The biggest difference, oh gosh, so many differences. In terms of the TV station, the technology is just, you know, light years ahead of what it was. When I first started, Quintin, even back in the 70s, we didn't have teleprompter, you know, where you see the words on the screen. Right. We had to type out our scripts. Didn't even have an electric typewriter. We did have an electric typewriter. And we type out our scripts. We didn't have producers. We shot film, like film in a camera, and I would shoot film, and then I would edit the film on a reel that would run in the projector room, much like you see in a movie house. When you go to see a movie, you know, it's on film. And so that's what I would do. I'd go out, shoot a story, bring it back. We had a film processor who would process the film, develop it, and then I would look at it and I would edit the film. That certainly has changed a lot. We didn't have nearly as many people as we have now. And we didn't have producers. A producer, I know you understand what a producer is, but for those who don't, a producer now is in charge of a newscast. We have a 5 o'clock producer, we have a 6 o'clock producer, we have a noon producer, we have a 4 o'clock producer, and that producer is in charge of getting everything together. The stories we run, writing the stories often, although we have some help in writing the stories, the producer does it all. Well, when I started in 73, Quintin, we had me. I shot the film, I edited the film, I produced the newscast, I read the newscast, and I wrote the newscast. We did it all.
You get it all? Yes, sir.
I was going to say the biggest difference I've seen in society is the wonderful improvement in race relations. And I know you're saying, wait a minute, race relations aren't great now. Well, we do have problems. But Quintin, they're much better now in terms of equality than they were in the 70s, and certainly light years ahead of what we saw when I was growing up as a kid in the 50s and 60s. So race relations, even though we still have issues from time to time, are much better for the most part than they were back in the 70s.
What did you experience in the 1950s, Bill?
Oh, I had an idyllic childhood, Quintin. We grew up poor. My mother was a school teacher, and my father was a high school principal. I had a younger brother, and Mother promised me. My mother said, they called me Billy when I was growing up, and she was from Georgia. She had a Georgia accent. She'd say, Billy. She'd say, I promise you'll get a brand new pair of jeans every year. And we thought, we didn't have any money, Quintin. We grew up poor, but we had a lot of love in the family, a lot of love, a strong family. And we thought a pair of jeans every year, man, I thought I was in heaven, and maybe even a pair of shoes, maybe a new pair of shoes every year or two. And went to public schools. My father was the first principal of Stono Park Elementary. But I couldn't go to Stono Park because they had a rule back then. If your father was the principal, you couldn't go to the same school where he was. So I went to St. Andrews Elementary. Right. And let me tell you a little secret that nobody knows until now. I'm probably revealing a secret to you. My father and Mr. C.B. Culbertson, the principal of my elementary school, St. Andrews, got together. Mr. Culbertson had kids going to my father's school. Dad, of course, had kids going to Mr. Culbertson's school, St. Andrews Elementary, where Mark and I, my brother and I went. So they got together and didn't tell anybody. And Mr. Culbertson gave me the best teachers. And my dad, in turn, gave Mr. Culbertson's kids the best teachers at Stono. So wow. I'm telling you a little family secret there, Quintin.
Thank you.
So anyway, getting back to your question, I had an idyllic childhood, a lot of love, went to church sometimes twice a week. Church was a big thing in my family.
Sure.
We went downtown to a church called Circular Congregational Church on Meeting Street.
Right, pass that every day.
Well, there you do. And it was a big influence in my life growing up. Mother was strong in the church. Dad was strong in the church. So church, as it is for many kids, or it used to be, I wish it still were in some ways, was a very strong influence in my life. Not to mention the fact that I had wonderful parents, educated parents, but they kept me on a short leash. Quintin, I didn't misbehave much because I knew what would happen if I did. So until I got off to college, I was pretty much kept at home. But I was when I was growing up, I was shy, believe it or not. And so I didn't stray much from the house.
Wow. And I know you talk about college, you talk about strong, you talk about your parents being strong. I know your mother was a big proponent of higher education. What do you think is the state of higher education today in 2020?
That's a very good question. higher education in some ways is terrific now. You got so many opportunities, and I'm happier now that higher education is much more open to minorities than it used to be, Quintin, when I was coming up. There are still some problems with higher education. One of them is, and I've got to think about this with my daughters who are will be nearing the age of college soon. I've got a senior now. Her name is Haley Catherine. She's a pistol. Oh my goodness. And we got to think about college for her next year. She's a senior at James Island Charter this year, which, by the way, is a very good school. I'm so happy I sent her there. But I've got to think about college. And Quintin, you know, I'm not a rich man. I'm not surviving on food scraps. But I'm not a wealthy man, and I've got 6 kids. And I've got to think about how we support sending her to college. I mean, what do we do? Do I take out student loans for her? Does she take out student loans? Do I pay as much as I can? College these days sometimes is just unaffordable. Right. And the good thing is, if you go to a community college like Trident Tech, which I have nothing but great things to say for it. Trident Tech is just a fabulous school. Fabulous. Yeah. That's affordable. Sometimes, you know, Charleston Southern, which used to be Baptist College, great school and affordable. College of Charleston, fabulous school, not quite as affordable, but still, you know, within the realm of possibility. The Citadel. Many of my friends went to the Citadel. Great school, and it's affordable. But if you go out of state, for example, I was fortunate enough to get into Emory University in Atlanta, in Decatur. The tuition now for Emory, I believe, Quintin, and I could be corrected on this, is $40,000 to $50,000 a year. $40,000 to $50,000 a year. Give me a break, Quintin. Who can afford that unless you're independently wealthy? And I'm not. So higher education, in terms of being more progressive in the sense of allowing more minorities in and seeking out minorities, is much better, much better. In terms of price, it stinks. We've got to do something in this country to make college, for those who want to go, affordable. And that's a key phrase I just uttered. For those who want to go. Quintin, not everybody should go to college. Tech school is fine for some. Some people work better if they stay out a year or two. My daughter, Emma, she's my stepdaughter, got into the College of Charleston. She's very smart, takes after her mama. And she got into the College of Charleston, but she's waiting a year and working. And she's making some money. Sure. So I think after a year of working, she'll probably then want to go back to college. But that's an option too.
Yes, sir. And Bill, how do you write the story about solutions for higher education and race relations?
Quintin, you got me. I'm not sure. What do you think? Give me your thoughts about it.
I can't speak on it. I can't speak on it. But you know more about it than I do.
I don't know. As I said, in terms of scholarships, we are now awarding more scholarships to minority students, and I see that as a wonderful thing. Let me give you an example.
Sure.
The guy, Jamie Harrison, running for the United States Senate, his grandmother raised him, essentially. He grew up in Orangeburg, dirt poor, even more poor than I was, Quintin, which is hard to imagine. He had nothing. He didn't have jack. And yet he ends up, because he's a very smart guy, very smart man, getting into Yale University, one of the top schools in the country. And then after he graduates from Yale, he goes to Georgetown Law, another top school in the country. Now, Jamie is very smart, and he deserves everything he's got. But that's a classic example, Quintin, of how colleges seek out minorities who are often poor, and help them out.
And you know what? You touched on Jamie Harrison, and I want to take you back, obviously, to the first debate they had between him and obviously current United States Senator Lindsey Graham. You're one of the panelists there. If you could do that particular debate over, Bill, what more questions would you ask both candidates?
Oh gosh, Quintin, that's a tough question to ask me. Here's a question that I was thinking about asking. I didn't have time. I was lucky to get in two questions. And I asked about a woman's right to choose. Does she have control over her own body in terms of Roe versus Wade, which legalized abortion in this country? There is some concern, as you heard in that debate, with Amy Coney Barrett, the new Supreme Court nominee from President Trump. There is concern, at least among Democrats, that she may work to overturn Roe versus Wade. She's a very conservative judge, very smart lady, but a very conservative judge, and a lady who doesn't care for abortions. So I ask about the abortion issue. Then I also ask about expanding Medicaid in this country. And I wish I had phrased the question about Medicaid this way. Listen to this, Quintin. Suppose you go buy a house and you get a federal FHA mortgage, Federal Housing Administration mortgage, and they tell you, hey, Quintin, when you buy this first house, your first house that you've ever bought, we'll pay for everything for 5 years. You pay for nothing, Quintin, nothing. You'd say, well, wait a minute. I've got a mortgage with you, and you're telling me you're going to pay the first 5 years and I pay nothing? And you say, yep, that's the way it is. That's the way it is when you expand Medicaid to help the poor in South Carolina. When you expand Medicaid for the first 5 years, I believe, Quintin, for the first 5 years, it's free. The federal government picks up the tab. Now, I say free. We all pay taxes, so ultimately we're all paying for it. But the state doesn't have to pitch in 1 penny for the first, I believe it's 5 years, Quintin. After that, we pay a percentage of the cost of expanding Medicaid. But imagine all the people in the state, Quintin, who have no health insurance, poor access to getting good quality health care, and this would help them all. There are thousands of people here in South Carolina, Quintin. We're a poor state who have no access to health care. If we took the simple step of expanding Medicaid, we could help all those poor people. And listen to this. If we don't expand Medicaid, we've refused so far, even though a majority of states in this country have. If we refuse Medicaid, expanding Medicaid, which we have, the money doesn't just go back to Washington, it goes to another state for their Medicaid program. So if we don't get it, somebody else gets it. I don't know. To me, that doesn't make a lot of sense, but that's just me.
And I know, obviously, this is a big topic around the country, but what other steps would you take to expand Medicaid, or Medicare, I should say?
Well, Medicare is for seniors, right? Medicaid is for everybody who's poor, whether you're a senior, a baby, a young kid. I just think it's sad in a rich country like the United States of America that people don't have quality health care, Quintin, that poor people people I know in South Carolina who don't have access to health care. They don't have health insurance. And so consequently, they're left in the dark with health care. And suppose, Quintin, you or I'm hoping you're healthy. I'm assuming you are. And, for an old guy, I'm fairly healthy too. But suppose we had pre-existing conditions and we had no insurance and we go get treatment and we get a bill for $100,000 or $200,000. How are we going to pay that? How are you going to pay that if you're a poor person and you've got a pre-existing condition like diabetes, like heart disease, like goodness knows what? Whereas if you expand Medicaid, everybody has options to get covered, including pre-existing conditions. So it just seems like, it seems like a no-brainer to me, but some people say that's too much government interference in our daily lives, that we're becoming too socialist with expanding Medicaid, and that, in effect, is a part of the socialist agenda, providing health care for everybody. Some people say is the beginning of socialism, the government providing health care for everybody.
And let me expand on a couple of news stories and describe to me the following one word. United States Congressman Joe Cunningham versus State Representative Nancy Mace.
What about him?
What's one word to describe that news story?
What's one way to describe that news story, Nancy Mace versus Joe Cunningham? Heated.
The loss of Judge Bernard Fielding.
I knew Judge Fielding, not well, but I knew him. Sad. What a loss for the community. Brilliant man, funny man, sense of humor, great sense of humor, and one of the smartest guys I ever knew. And he was old enough. You can be smart and dumb at the same time when you're young, Quintin. When you were young, you probably did some things that were dumb. I've done many things that were stupid. Judge Fielding had wisdom added to that brilliance of his. Just a wonderful guy. I just love being around him. He was a gentleman through and through, and modest and funny, had a good sense of humor. And I love Judge Fielding. Fielding.
I interviewed him. It really is. And I interviewed him just last year over at the Fielding's Funeral Home right there on Logan Street. So he was a great guy, very great guy. Describe to me the removal of the John C. Calhoun statue in one word.
One word to describe the removal of the John C. Calhoun statue. Controversial.
The opening of the new MUSC Children's Hospital.
Wonderful.
Yes, sir.
Wonderful.
Quintin,
yes, sir. I have twins who are 17, and my little fellow William, as you know, is a special needs guy, and his sister is Haley Catherine, and they're twins. They look nothing alike. Haley Catherine is tall and thin, and William is short and, well, maybe stubby is a little bit is a good way to put it, chunky, and yet they were in the Children's Hospital. The Children's Hospital saved William's life. Without the Children's Hospital, I don't think little William would be here. And so I have just great respect and love for what they did, and thankfulness for saving little William's life. And little Haley Catherine was born. They were both born prematurely, and she had some problems, but she quickly overcame them. William almost went home to Jesus several times.
Wow. Well, thank God he's alive right now.
He's alive, and that that personality he's got, Quintin. If he were here right now, he would say, "Quintin, you're fired."
And everybody loves him on Facebook. He's a superstar on Facebook.
He is a superstar on Facebook. We got away from doing the videos because for some reason, Quintin, the pandemic set in, number one. Number two, something went wrong with my Facebook page. I'm trying to rectify the problem. Right. I can't post videos with him anymore. I don't know why. Facebook is looking into it to try to help me out to see if we can figure out what's going on. Let me tell you a quick story about William and his wanting to fire you. In the year was 2016, and I was in Mount Pleasant, and then candidate Donald Trump was making an appearance, And I was able to get a quick little 5 or 6 minute interview with him. Right. Very nice interview, by the way. He's very respectful, nice to me. Right. And when I told him at the end of the interview, I said, Mr. Trump, again, this was before he was President Trump. He was running for. I said, Mr. Trump, my little fellow William is a special needs character guy, and he always says, you're fired. And I said, do you have a message for my little fellow William? And he said, sure, Bill. And he looked in the camera and he said, William, you've got a very nice father. But let me tell you something, William, you're fired. That was so nice of now President Trump to do that. Also, Quintin, talking about President Trump, I asked him, and again, this was when he was running for president.
That's right.
And I said, Mr. Trump, if you get elected, I had a feeling he might be. I said, Mr. Trump, if you get elected, may I come to the White House and interview you? And he said, absolutely. And he told it to his sort of a lady who was watching out for him. Right. And so I called the White House after he got elected, but didn't get the interview. So it was a good idea. Yeah.
Good idea. I believe you'll get it at some point. And you talk about years. Oh, go ahead.
No, that's all right.
Oh, no. I was going to go back to years because last time I interviewed you for Quintin's Close-Ups was May 15th, 2013. I was over in West Ashley. And you talked to me about your future at WCSC. You say, quote, we will see what happens. That was 7 years ago. You're still here. What's next for Bill Sharpe?
Well, I'm 70 years old, Quintin. They treat me very, very well here. Yes. I love the job. I get a chance to talk to people and bring them the news of the day. And I've got wonderful producers who help me out. I've got maybe the best news director I've ever worked for. Her name is Jennifer Dale. She's terrific. Yeah. And the general manager's name is Dan Cates. And Dan is just the nicest guy in the world. So, and they seem to enjoy my hanging around. So who knows, Quintin? Who knows what's going to happen?
And you also told me this too. You have to keep the business fresh, meaning television news. How is your experience keeping the local television news business fresh these days?
How do I keep it fresh?
Yes, sir.
It keeps me fresh. Quintin, let me tell you what we've gone from since when I first started 47 years ago, right here. We had cameras, we had camera people, and we were down on East Bay Street, 485 East Bay. You've probably been by there several times. The building doesn't exist anymore, but I got 2 bricks. Did you?
Mine's upstairs in the house.
Well, you're going to have to show me that. I didn't know that.
Yeah, I went by there, what was it, a year ago when they were tearing it down. I took 2 bricks and, I have it right upstairs in my closet. Yes,
well,
sir.
Good for you. I do too. And so then we transitioned in 1997 to the new station. Back then it was new, here in West Ashley. Yeah. And we've been here ever since. Now, we started off back then shooting film that I shot often, not always, but I shot some film and editing the film. Then back then we went to videotape. Then sometime in the 80s, we went to teleprompter. Then we went to video cameras that don't shoot film or videotape. They're video cameras. And now here in the last year or so, we have remote cameras. We have cameras coming down from the ceiling, small cameras. We don't have camera people anymore. So we have directors, who punch in, okay, camera 4 for Bill, camera 2 for Anne. Bill, you're over here for camera 4. Then we go over here to camera 6, and we do all that kind of stuff. So that's a big change that I've seen. And Quintin, it's been good for me. This old guy, they keep me young here. This old dog keeps trying to learn new tricks. And it's a challenge sometimes, but it's so much fun. I'm still basically a reptile when it comes to the internet. I'm a dinosaur. You know, I can do the basics, but I wouldn't be able to even do that. I wouldn't be able to sign onto a computer to see you on my phone, to get your messages, were it not for my work here at Live 5. You know, they've taught me so much. I've had to learn how to receive and send emails. I live, Quintin, by texting. I'm on Twitter. I'm on Facebook.
Right.
I need to be on Instagram a little bit more than I am. So I've learned all that, and I have Live 5, Channel 5, to thank me for that, because I know me. If I just sat at home all day, I'd still be a dinosaur, you know, looking at old westerns from 1964, like Bonanza, which is the way I like it.
Yes. And you talk about Anne McGill. I know that when I talked with you for Quintin's Close-Ups back in 2013, you basically says, hey, in order for an anchor team to work, you got to know the rhythms of the other anchor. What rhythms do you have now working with Anne McGill?
And so easy, and so nice, and so kind, and so funny. Yes. Brilliant lady.
Yes,
her kindness shows through, Quintin, and she helps me whenever she can, and that's often. I often need help. Anne is just a wonderful, wonderful person, and I'm very close to Anne. She's like my sister. I call her my TV sister. And she, I'm privileged. I have been very fortunate in my life to work with two strong, wonderful women. And you know the first one, Debbie Chard.
Yes.
And then Debbie, she loved you, Quinn, still does.
Yes.
She retired, and now I'm lucky enough to work with Anne McGill. What a wonderful woman. I mean, I can't ask for more than her. Kind, funny, compassionate, and she'll break you up sometimes with her jokes. She teases me unmercifully, and I love it.
Yes. And she usually comes down to Five Church to dine with us at Five Church, so she's always great. And hopefully when we get to be able to deliver some more business lunch, we'll come back to the station and drop off some food. You talk about Debbie Chard. I was actually on Keel Island that day, which was the last day. And I remember calling Jennifer Dale, letting her know that, hey, I don't think I can make it because I want to surprise Debbie with a gift card from Five Church. But that was a very emotional day for everybody, because personally, I grew up with Bill, Debbie, Charlie, Warren, Bill Walsh, Harv Jacobs. And I know that you spent 29 years on the anchor desk with Debbie. Where were you emotionally?
Where was I emotionally?
Yes, sir, that day when she stepped down from the anchor desk.
Oh, it was like losing a best friend, like losing my best friend. I got a little emotional, teared up a little bit. Debbie didn't. She thought it was great. It was me. And she was the one who was leaving after, 42, 43 years, however many years she'd been here. We've been anchoring, as you said, for 29 years, I think, on the air together. I was the one who got teary-eyed and, I choked up a little bit. But, it was the passing of an era for me with Debbie retiring. So I asked her, I guess a couple of months after she left, I said, "You enjoying retirement?" She said, "Oh, the freedom of it, the freedom." And I said, "Well, I'm envious. So, but that was a tough time for me. But I'll tell you what helped me, Quintin, knowing that I had Anne McGill right there with me. Just great. And we've got other people I've worked with for years. Raphael James, Harv Jacobs, you mentioned. Lisa Weissman is terrific. This young lady, Michael Higdon, boy, that girl is so talented. I wish I had her talent at her young age. I mean, that woman can do it all. Anchor, report, ad-lib like nobody's business. That woman is great. And then we got a morning crew, Aisha Tyler and Kyle Jordan, whom I call for some reason Doctor. I call him Doctor. So I'll come into the station and I'll say, "Hey, Doctor, how you doing?" And so we just got wonderful people. Lillian Donahue's a new reporter. Rob Way and Lillian, by the way, just got nominated for 2 awards.
Congratulations to them.
Thank you. They deserve it. It's well deserved. We've got a wonderful team. And it keeps me young. It keeps this old man young, Quintin, to work with all these young folks. It's wonderful.
Wonderful. And I know you got to run because you have to anchor the noon show here, and I got to go run off to work. But you obviously, at one point in your life, you basically, and you told me this in the interview during Quintin's Close Stuff, that you never intended on staying in Charleston. How have you adapted to Charleston, staying in Charleston, after you decided not to leave? What is Charleston now to you?
Well, that's a very good question. I'm from Charleston. I grew up
Right.
in West Ashley, right? So Charleston is my home. Went to
Yeah.
school in Atlanta at Emory University, and that was the big city to me. And I wanted to try the big city lights. So I came back after having graduated in 1972, got a job for a year in radio as a radio news guy, and I had a talk show at night. And I told the guys there, I said, look, I'll give you a year, and then I want to move back to Atlanta. So I gave them a year and turned in my resignation. Then I was heading back to Atlanta to see what that big city held for me. I had an aunt and an uncle I could live with for a while who lived close by. So I was about to go back to Atlanta, and I got a call from a guy named Carol Godwin. And back then, Carol was the news director here at Live 5, and he was also the host of a show called On Camera at 1 o'clock. And he said, I hear good things about you. You want to come audition for the 11 o'clock news as the anchorman? And I thought, I don't know. So I talked to my parents, and Mom and Dad said, are you crazy? I said, well, I'd have to shave, because in radio, you don't have to shave. I said, I'd have to shave and cut my hair. And they said, do it. So I shaved, got a haircut. Back then we had long hair, of course, and got the job. And I've been here ever since. I've seen Charleston grow from a very small city to a cosmopolitan city. And the biggest thing that I like that I have seen is we're now much more open, Quintin, to minorities than we were. There's much more of a chance in my business and in Charleston in general to get a job and flourish and do well, even if you're a minority. Back when I was coming up, that wasn't the case. Charleston has opened up. It's a much fairer community than it was. Now, we still have a long way to go, but we're getting there, my friend.
And you talk about flourish. Let me talk to you about Channel 5. You all have been number one as long as I've been living. I'm 36 now. Just turned 36 last week. How do you all continue to flourish in the midst of internet, social media, and all the craziness that's going on right now?
People still want local news, Quintin. They still want local news. And the older folks, my age and even a little younger, still watch TV. Now, they don't watch TV the way probably you, maybe even you watched, certainly as I watched growing up. You'd turn on the tube at a certain time. In our case, 6 o'clock or 6:30. Our early newscast for a long time was 6:30, not 6, and watch the news. Now what a lot of people do is tape you, right? So that on your phone, whenever you want to, you can say, let me see what Bill's doing today. Let me see what Anne McGill's saying today. Let me see what Kevin Bilodeau in sports is doing. What about Bill Walsh? What's he saying about the weather? So you click it in and you play that.
Right.
So there you go.
Yeah,
that's the big difference. But local news, Quintin, local TV news will always be needed and hopefully will always be relevant.
Mm-hmm. Yes, indeed. I agree. And obviously, you interviewed President Reagan. You interviewed Donald Trump when he was running for obviously the White House. And you interviewed a slew of other people and cover stories such as the food and whatnot. What particular story defines you as a journalist?
Quintin, you're breaking up here. I can hear you. I think you said, what's the biggest story that defines me as a journalist?
Yes,
One of my biggest stories was seeing the installation of a new pope in Rome back about 86, 87. His name was Albino Luciani. And I went over to interview our local bishop, whose name was Ernest Unterkeffler. And he was a wonderful guy. And so I covered that. And Albino Luciani became Pope John Paul I. He only lived for about a month. And then Pope John Paul II was installed as the new pope. That was a big story. But Quintin, and certainly Hurricane Hugo was terrible. I never hoped to relive that. But that was a defining moment for me. But maybe the most defining moment, the most shock I have ever felt, the saddest, the most unbelieving I have ever felt was the Mother Emanuel massacre. I still, to this day, it's been 5 years. Well, 5.5 years almost. Not quite, almost 5.5 years. I still haven't gotten over that, Quintin. And I'm not sure I ever will. I just can't, I can't understand that. I don't understand that. To this day, Quintin, to this day, I don't understand racial hatred, but racial hatred so much that it would drive anybody to massacre other people just because of the color of their skin. I always worship Dr. Martin Luther King, who said, "Judge me not by the color of my skin, but by the content of my character." I took that to heart early on. So I don't understand how somebody could have so much hate, racial hatred in your heart, that you could do something like that. Murder people because of the color of their skin. That has stuck with me and will stick with me, Quintin, until I die. Quintin, it's been a pleasure to talk to you, and anytime you need to talk, I'm here. By the way, I want you to know that I'm so proud of the way you handled that situation where the boys were attacking you downtown. You held up your dignity, and I'm proud of you, and I'm also angry about what happened. And I want you to know, Quintin, I got your back. I got your back.